Imagine being the most successful general in your nation's army.
Right.
You're married to the king's daughter, living in the royal palace, and, well, you wake up to realize your father-in-law has just dispatched a hit squad to your front door.
It is honestly a terrifying scenario.
It really is.
Uh,
Welcome to the deep dive.
hmm.
Before we jump into this wild manhunt, I
Yeah.
want to start by extending a very warm, sincere, and divine blessing over your day and your entire upcoming week.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
you find clarity, peace, and purpose in whatever you're facing right now. We are just so glad you're here with us. Today, we are opening up 1 Samuel chapter 19.
And we're pulling some fascinating insights from the study notes and commentary of the Holman and NAA study Bibles, right?
Exactly. But, we aren't just reading a dry historical narrative here. Our mission today is to track this really intense collision. It's a collision between the illusion of human control and the absolute reality of divine sovereignty.
That's exactly the lens we need for this material, because on the surface, you are looking at royal paranoia.
Yeah, intense political maneuvering.
Right, and high-stakes survival. But underneath all of that, you are watching this power struggle between what a human king desperately wants to control and what a higher authority has already decreed.
Wow. So to set the context for you, the listener, we are looking at the court of King Saul, the reigning monarch of Israel.
Right, and his son, Jonathan, is the crown prince.
Yeah, and then there's David. David is the wildly popular military commander who killed Goliath.
Which is a huge detail. And Saul is currently being consumed by this deadly, just completely irrational jealousy of him.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because the tension in the palace has just reached an absolute boiling point.
It really has.
And the very first thing we see is a distinctly human attempt to control the fallout. I mean, Saul has literally just issued a kill order to his staff and to his own son, Jonathan, demanding David's execution.
Right, he wants him dead. But Jonathan is secretly loyal to David, so he warns him to hide. Then Jonathan steps into the throne room to basically try to reason with his father, who is clearly spiraling into severe paranoia.
So how does Jonathan even approach that? Because that sounds impossible.
Well, he approaches this crisis with a highly structured, logical defense. According to the study notes, he actually presents 3 distinct arguments to his father.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, he establishes David's absolute legal innocence. He points out that, David hasn't committed any crime against the crown whatsoever.
Right, he's totally innocent.
Exactly. Second, he reminds Saul of the geopolitical reality. David risked his own life to defeat the Philistines.
Which brought massive military success and national security to the entire country.
Precisely. And third, he brings in a moral and theological warning. He says that killing David would bring the guilt of innocent blood upon the throne.
Oh, wow. And in the ancient Near East, that was believed to basically curse a dynasty, right?
Yes, exactly. It was a massive deal.
If we were looking at this in a modern corporate framework, this is the equivalent of a massive corporation where the CEO is suddenly determined to fire their absolute top-performing executive.
Yeah, strictly out of unadulterated insecurity.
Exactly. And a brave board member steps into the office, closes the door, and says, listen, this executive hasn't violated any company policies.
Right.
More importantly, they literally just saved us from bankruptcy last quarter. If you terminate them, you aren't just hurting them, you are actively tanking the entire company and opening us up to massive liability.
That is a perfect analogy. You are basically forcing the paranoid leader to look at the bottom line. It is an appeal to the king's self-interest, dressed in this undeniable logic.
And initially, it appears to actually work, doesn't it?
It does. The text tells us that Saul listens to Jonathan and takes an oath. He says, "As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death."
Wow. So Jonathan brings David back to court, and the diplomatic solution seems to have successfully contained the whole crisis.
But appealing to a deeply paranoid ruler with logic is, well, it's like trying to put out a grease fire with water.
Oh, man. Yeah. It seems like you're using the exact right tool, but it actually causes the hostility to just explode.
Exactly. Paranoia feeds on the very facts you're trying to use as a defense.
Because Jonathan's logic was that David is successful and therefore essential. But the moment war breaks out again, David goes out, fights the Philistines, and achieves another massive victory.
Right, and by winning again, David proves Jonathan's logic right, which ironically just makes Saul feel exponentially more threatened. The grease fire explodes.
That is a tragic mechanism of jealousy right there. Success is the ultimate trigger.
It really is, and the text describes an evil spirit coming over Saul while he is sitting in his house. He's holding a spear, while David is in the room playing the harp.
Now, for a modern listener, The phrase evil spirit requires some historical context, right?
Yeah, definitely. The ancient Israelite worldview didn't compartmentalize psychological illness and spiritual affliction the way modern Western medicine does today.
Right, it was all intertwined.
Exactly. The study commentaries often interpret this as a permissible judgment. Basically, God had withdrawn his sovereign favor and spirit from Saul.
Leaving a vacuum.
Right, a vacuum that was filled by a tormenting, chaotic affliction.
And David playing the harp isn't just some casual background music. In the ancient world, music was deeply intertwined with spiritual warfare and royal temperament.
Yeah, it was an active attempt to restore order to a chaotic mind.
But you have to imagine the sheer tension in that room. You are trying to spiritually and emotionally soothe this powerful ruler who is glaring at you.
While his knuckles are turning white around the shaft of a deadly weapon.
Exactly. And then the illusion of diplomatic control shatters completely. Saul snaps.
Yeah, the paranoia completely overrides that solemn oath he just swore to his son.
He hurls the spear, trying to literally pin David to the wall.
And David manages to dodge it at the absolute last second. The spear drives into the wall, and David flees into the night.
Wow. So the logical human attempt to fix the problem has officially failed.
Completely failed. Which brings us to a frantic physical escape. David runs back to his own house, but the threat just follows him.
Right, his wife Michal. And she happens to be King Saul's daughter, which just adds this brutal layer of family trauma to the narrative.
Oh, absolutely. She realizes the house is surrounded. Saul has sent assassins to watch the perimeter all night and execute David in the morning.
So she helps him escape out of a window, but she knows she has to buy him time, which leads to a deception that completely stopped me in my tracks when I was reading the study notes.
What's fascinating here is the sheer mechanics of her cover-up. She takes a household idol, the Hebrew word is teraphim, and she places it in David's bed.
Wait, okay.
Yes, she covers it with clothes, and then she takes a piece of woven goat hair and places it at the head of the idol to simulate human hair in the dim light.
That is wild.
And when Saul's men finally come to the door demanding David, she just points to the bed and simply claims he is sick.
Right, and the goat hair trick is really clever, but we have to pause on the idol itself.
I know, it's surprising.
Why does the hero of Israel, the man who just killed Goliath in the name of the Lord, have a life-sized pagan household idol sitting in his bedroom?
It's a great question. We are talking about an object large enough to pass for a grown man under a blanket.
Yeah, it is a jarring detail, and the commentaries spend significant time on it, don't they?
They do. The text doesn't explicitly condemn her for it in this specific verse, but it acts as a massive window into the messy, complicated reality of this historical era.
Right.
The presence of teraphim shows us that even in David's own household, syncretism was happening.
Syncretism being the blending of different religious practices.
Exactly. These household gods in the ancient Near East weren't just about worship. They were often tied to family inheritance rights and domestic protection.
Wow, so it reveals that the culture wasn't perfectly religiously pure. It strips away that sanitized Sunday school polish and leaves you with gritty historical realism.
Yeah, this is a messy palace.
So the decoy works temporarily. Saul's men report back that David is sick. But Saul is so far gone that he tells them to bring David to him, bed and all, so he can execute him.
Right, the assassins burst in, rip back the covers, and find this dummy made of an idol and goat hair. Saul is just furious.
Oh, I bet. He confronts his daughter Michal, demanding to know why she deceived him. And her response is a brutal lesson in palace survival politics.
It really is. She looks at her father and lies completely. She claims that David threatened her life, saying, "Let me go, why should I kill you?"
But we know from the preceding verses that this never happened. David didn't threaten her.
Not at all. The study notes highlight how this showcases the intense, primal survival dynamics at play in a corrupted court.
Right. Michal is standing in front of a monarch who just tried to murder her husband.
Exactly. She has every reason to fear he might turn that homicidal rage onto her.
So since there were no witnesses in the bedroom to prove otherwise, she uses this fabricated threat as a political shield to protect herself from Saul's wrath.
Yeah, human diplomacy failed. Human deception bought a few hours, but it ultimately failed to solve the root problem.
And David is now completely exposed, on the run, and he desperately needs a sanctuary. But he doesn't retreat to a military stronghold.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't try to rally the troops who are loyal to him. Instead, he flees to Ramah to find Samuel, the aging prophet who originally anointed him.
It's a massive strategic shift. When political, familial, and military structures have all turned completely hostile, David seeks out the highest spiritual authority in the land.
Right. And the study materials point out that David and Samuel go to stay at Naioth.
Yeah, Naioth isn't necessarily a standard town. The notes suggest it was a settlement or perhaps a specific encampment.
Like a place for groups of prophets who lived, studied, and worshipped under Samuel's leadership in Ramah.
Exactly.
But Saul's intelligence network is highly capable. He gets a tip about David's exact location, and he dispatches a squad of royal messengers, essentially an armed strike team, to go and drag David back.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because we are shifting from human attempts at control to blatant divine intervention.
Oh, absolutely. When these armed men arrive at Naioth, they find Samuel presiding over a congregation of prophets who are prophesying.
And in this context, that likely means they were deeply engaged in ecstatic worship and praise.
Right, and suddenly the text says the Spirit of God overpowers Saul's men. They stop their mission, drop their hostility, and start prophesying too.
It fundamentally breaks the natural laws of cause and effect.
It really does.
You have men sent with murderous, highly focused military intentions, and their agency is completely overridden without a single physical weapon being drawn against them.
If you try to map this onto a modern equivalent, just imagine a hostile government sending a heavily armed, highly trained SWAT team to raid a compound and eliminate a high-value target.
Okay, picture that.
They kick open the doors, weapons raised, adrenaline pumping, but the absolute second they cross the threshold, an invisible weight hits them. They drop their rifles, close their eyes, and spontaneously join a choir singing hymns. The sheer mechanics of that are surreal. The human will is just instantly subjugated.
It is a profound, undeniable demonstration of divine sovereignty, and the narrative utilizes the rule of threes to really hammer this point home.
Oh yeah, the rule of threes.
When Saul hears his first elite squad failed, he doesn't pause to reconsider his actions. He sends a second group of messengers.
And the exact same overriding force hits them. They start prophesying.
Right, so he sends a third group, and amazingly, they also fall under the same overwhelming influence.
That is just incredible.
The study notes emphasize that this repetitive structure is meant to repeatedly show God actively, effortlessly subduing the evil intentions of a human ruler.
It's like God's presence is acting as an impenetrable force field around David. Human armies simply cannot cross the threshold.
Exactly. But Saul's paranoia has made him completely immune to taking a hint.
Yeah, 3 entire squads of his best men have vanished into a worship service. And instead of realizing he is fighting a war against a sovereign God, he decides to handle the assassination himself.
He leaves the capital and forcefully marches to Ramah.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, Saul's arrival at Ramah is one of the most symbolically devastating moments in his entire reign, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. Before he even reaches Naioth, while he is still on the road, the Spirit of God comes upon him as well.
Wow.
He is seized by the same prophetic ecstasy, prophesying the entire way there. And when he finally arrives in the physical presence of Samuel, he strips off his royal robes, his tunic, and he lies naked on the ground all day and all night.
You read that, and initially it just sounds like a bizarre, chaotic detail.
It does.
The king of Israel, lying in the dirt, completely incapacitated and undressed. But the study commentaries make it clear that this isn't just about embarrassment.
No, not at all.
There's a deep structural mechanism at play here regarding ancient Near Eastern culture.
Absolutely. In the ancient world, clothing wasn't just fabric. It was the literal representation of a person's legal standing, their identity, and their authority.
Right.
To wear the royal tunic was to visually and legally embody the kingship. Therefore, the stripping of that royal tunic physically represents the spiritual and legal reality that God is stripping Saul of his kingdom and his authority.
That makes so much sense. Saul marched to Ramah to exert his absolute royal power, to forcefully impose his will and end David's life.
Yeah.
Instead, the divine sovereignty he was fighting completely dismantles him. He is entirely subjugated, pushed into the dirt, stripped of his legal standing by a power infinitely greater than his own.
It is a massive public deposition, and it leaves such an indelible impression on the people who witness it that it actually sparks a national proverb.
Right, the proverb is Saul also among the prophets.
Exactly, because these actions are so wildly fundamentally out of character for this angry, erratic, violent king.
The man who relies on spears and armies has been completely, legally and physically neutralized.
Precisely. But the text is clear that this neutralization is temporary. While Saul is pinned to the ground, incapacitated by the Spirit, David realizes that the sanctuary at Naioth isn't a permanent solution.
Right, he uses that window of divine intervention to run. So what does this all mean for David?
Well,
Because when you look at the source material, there is a sprawling geographical map provided that traces David's movements from this exact point forward.
and that map is so important.
We've got this entire deep dive zooming in on a few frantic, claustrophobic days inside the palace and the prophet's camp. But when you look at that map, you realize this was merely the starting gun of a massive, exhausting, years-long fugitive lifestyle.
Yeah, the map acts as a vital tool to understand the physical and psychological toll of this narrative.
Yeah.
It tracks David's relentless punishing movement.
Where does he go first?
We see him flee from the royal comforts of Gibeah to Ramah, where this divine intervention just occurred. But from there, he has to run to Nob, where he desperately begs the priest for common bread. And he actually takes the sword of Goliath just to have a physical weapon in his hands again.
That is desperate.
From Nob, the map shows him fleeing entirely out of Israelite territory into the Philistine city of Gath, which is enemy lines. He hides out in the damp, dark cave of Adullam.
Just constantly moving.
He has to travel all the way across the geopolitical borders to Moab just to establish a safe house for his elderly parents. And then he's back on the run, hiding in the thick forests and the desolate, rocky wildernesses of Ziph, Maon, and En-Gedi.
That map is vital for you, the listener, to visualize.
Yeah.
Because it is so easy to read history and let your eyes just glide over the words.
Oh, for sure.
You read, he went here, then he went there, and it takes 3 seconds. But look at the sheer geography of it.
Yeah.
Think about the physical reality. The dirt under his fingernails, the chronic lack of sleep, the hypervigilance of constantly looking over your shoulder.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
David was the golden boy. He was a national hero, a celebrated military commander who ate at the king's table. And almost overnight, the political structure turns on him, and he's reduced to a desperate fugitive.
He's sleeping on stone floors in caves.
Right. He's constantly facing betrayal. Like the men of Ziph, who the study notes specifically point out, tried to sell his location out to Saul. The physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion required to survive this journey is staggering.
It really is.
Yet, the through line remains. Through all those harsh miles and all those terrifying close calls, he is continually, miraculously spared from capture.
It forces a complete reframing of how we understand power. As you trace their paths across that map, you have Saul, who controls the standing armies, the national wealth, the royal title, and the stone fortresses.
Yeah.
And you have David, who has absolutely nothing but the clothes on his back, a few loyal outcasts, and a divine promise.
Wow, what a contrast.
Yet the geographical reality shows that Saul is the one who is hopelessly trapped. He's imprisoned by his own paranoia and jealousy within his palace walls.
While David, even while hunted in the desolate wilderness, is the one who is truly free because he's operating under the protection of a sovereign God. It is a total inversion of what human logic tells us about power. And that brings us to the end of this incredible narrative arc for today's deep dive.
Before we close, this raises a profound question about the nature of control, something I want to leave you with to mull over as you go about your week.
I love that.
Throughout this entire text, we watched Saul violently clinging to his power. He tried to control his legacy by throwing spears, issuing death warrants, and deploying elite strike teams to forcefully grip onto his position.
Right.
But ultimately, what were the mechanics of that forceful grip? Where did it leave him? He ended up lying in the dirt, legally stripped of his royal robes, completely and totally powerless.
Oh.
It highlights this fascinating paradox. Sometimes, the harder you forcefully grip onto power, status, or control, the more completely you end up exposing your own helplessness.
That's so true.
True authority, the kind David was walking in, wasn't protected by throwing spears, mastering political deception, or manipulating outcomes. It was protected by trusting the sovereign process, even when that process meant leaving the comforts of the palace and fleeing into the exhausting unknown of the wilderness.
Such a powerful, counterintuitive thought to end on. You don't have to throw spears to secure your future.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love unpacking the mechanics of these historical moments with you. Have an amazing week ahead, and remember, God blesses all the listeners. We will catch you next time.